Welcome to UE News, the weekend edition, and thanks for joining us. I'm Eldecia Thompson. Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, announced today at the House of Assembly that his campaign is built on his belief that the Bahamas should be for Bahamians. After this announcement, Haitians, Jamaicans, Cubans, and even Bahamians took to social media to express their outrage on the Prime Minister's prejudice. Right before news time, the Prime Minister responded to the outrage stating, "That's not what I meant." In his written message, he notes that first preference will be given to all Bahamians, regardless of the manner in which they have acquired citizenship. Lavana Wallace has that report. Thank you, Eldecia. Tony Robbins notes, to effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. Today, we canvass the local neighborhood to ascertain whose fault it was that Minnis's communication was ineffective. Most persons agreed that globalization has posed a challenge with workplace communication. Areas of concern were the difference in language, culture, and/or stereotypical behavior. According to Daft and Markick in 2013, globalization is the extent to which trade, investments, information, social, and cultural ideas flow between countries. With an ever-growing diverse population, language barriers can pose a challenge in effective communication. Even across countries whose native language is the same, culture can impede the communication process as it provides the setting for which thinking is incubated. Thus, the same spoken words can vary in definition, even when the same language is spoken. What about the language that we do not verbalize? Lavana, it was only a few years ago when I can vividly recall sucking my teeth at a Guyanese teacher. While this gesture was an indication of my annoyance, it replaced a very derogatory phrase in Guyanese culture. But I'm sure that this is where we can agree that globalization has introduced a diverse cultural base that has subsequently hindered workplace communication. Well, Eldecia, in an article entitled Cultural Barriers to Effective Communication, the University of Colorado notes that the constraints that diversity presents in the communication process can be rooted in the norms that is complemented by a particular culture. In low-context cultures like America, the right to free speech may be well respected, but in China, the old proverb says, half-filled bottles make the most noise. On these opposite ends of the spectrum, norms are often misunderstood and workplace communication can be ineffective. When this happens, employees can become frustrated and hostile and may refuse to communicate in general, says Clark Bingham in 2011. But Eldecia, what about stereotypes? The residents of this neighborhood believe that Dr. Minnis has a vibe with non-Bahamians. I'll have to disagree with you on that, Lavana. I believe that education and exposure hinders workplace communication far more than globalization ever could. The good doctor knew and understood that the word Bahamian varied in legal definition. The outrage was birthed by those who did not know the difference. Oftentimes, communication has to be simplified in order to be effective. Managers and their employees would operate more efficiently if they had considered the educational differences between the two. But before we leave, what suggestions might you have for managers who wish to avoid the same? I do understand your perspective, Eldecia, but Daft and Markick notes that training is the primary means by which thought processes are altered in an organization. If managers wish to avoid the Dr. Minnis fiasco, they would become more culturally conscious, increase the vetting process for prospective employees, and create a culture of mutual respect across the organization. It's always a pleasure to engage in such provocative discussions with you, Lavana. But that ends our segment for tonight. I'm Eldecia Thompson, This